But
Um,
going to the receivers now,
yeah.
obviously, like with running backs, we could always be like, yo, they take over, they're gonna be game changers. It's harder to find late receivers, bruh. It really is
No,
harder because
absolutely.
the guys that are there, it's like we know who those dudes are. But when it comes
Yeah.
to like finding gems at receiver, you don't just find Puka Nakuas every year.
No.
Who's the guy you're looking at late that has a lot of upside?
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of just talked about it, right? Like, I think that truly the best dart throws at the wide receiver position are just the guys who are, rookies. Because yeah, you might not find Puka Nakua, but you can find Jane Reed, you can find Rasheed Rice. There's always these guys who are going later. And it's, in my opinion, it's always best to just draft the young guys. Now, you might hit on Adam Thielen, but Adam Thielen kind of fell off at the end of the year. So my guy, like I have two of them, and I'm just going to talk about them both, like link them together. But one of them's Jalen Polk, and the other one's Troy Franklin. Now, the problem with Jalen Polk, though, honestly, is really the college profile is not good for Jalen Polk. So I think that there's probably a good chance he's not going to be very good. Well, I don't want to say not be very good, but can just be okay. But he is in a situation right now where there's no true number one wide receiver. And you might say Demario Douglas, and he's also an interesting name. But Jalen Polk, you have him coming into this offense. They've been very high on him since training camp. I want to say he's already set to start for this team right out the gate. So if Drake May ends up being decent, and I do like Drake May a lot, what you see with just good quarterbacks is they elevate the talent around them. So if Jalen Polk, maybe he was just, playing behind Roma Dunze, who looks like he's an absolute stud. And that's why he was never able to fully be the person that he could potentially be if he's kind of relied upon to be the number one guy. So he's a guy. And then Troy Franklin is just kind of in the same sense where, well, he has a good draft profile. He's earned a high target share and he's broken out at a young age. Very good athleticism, going to a team where he's playing with his college quarterback. And yes, there's Cortland Sutton, but like Cortland Sutton's okay. Like, is he one of the better wide receiver ones in the NFL? No. I think that there's a chance that Troy Franklin, maybe not right out of the gate, because you don't see it with these rookie wide receivers, anytime. Like, it always takes a little bit of time for them to get up and going, but he's a big play threat that could have some big spike weeks that I'd rather take him and just kind of see how it plays out than take, like a somebody else we'll be talking about in a little bit.
Well, this, I don't mind it. And one of the things I look for with late round receivers is, it's easy to go for rookies and like, kind of hope for optimism that they earn a starting role. But a lot of times I look for guys that are overlooked in offenses that already have a starting role. So I can look to like Buffalo. There's a couple guys that are probably going late to have a starting role. Jacksonville, you have a Gabe Davis that has a starting role. Who knows what that we've seen that in Buffalo and how it looks. But I'm typically looking for undervalued guys that have starting roles that can be an immediate impact on your lineup if they hit. And one of the players I'm looking at is in Baltimore with Rashod Bateman. Obviously, last year the team signed Odell Beckham. It didn't work, right? They drafted Zay Flowers. It did work. And so they've been looking for a complementary piece. And Bateman was a guy that was drafted as a first-round pick previously. They haven't got the most out of him. He hasn't been available to stay on the field, and he hasn't been as productive as we hoped when he's seen the field. There's been a lot of talk that he looks renewed this year, that he looks like a different player, and that the team is focused on seeing what they have out of him. I don't know what that means for fantasy, but when it comes for dart throws later on, you want the coaches to be talking about an increased workload, a most improved player on the team. It's expected to be him. You want the players talking about him. And if the focus really is on Rashod Bateman, there's wide receiver 3 upside immediately if he becomes a 5 to 7 target guy. So I look at Rashod Bateman as one of those players late that's going outside of the top 60 receivers. He's a starter right now in the league, and he offers weekly upside. And it's not like we haven't seen him be productive on the field in spurts. Give me Rashod Bateman late, guy that's starting. I like the pick.
Yeah. I disagree, but it's okay.
Why you disagree? Tell me.
Well, I just think that Rashod Bateman's had his chance and he hasn't proved anything in the league. Like, typically you don't see these guys. I want to say this is 4th year now. You just don't see them break out. Like, it doesn't happen, or he has to be a massive outlier for it to happen. So and this kind of like alludes to the other point where, like, I go with the young guys just because they're, unknown, right? We don't truly know what their actual upside is. And like, for me, there's 2 guys at the wide receiver position that I just have zero interest in. Like, we saw it last year with Adam Thielen. Well, what they do, they just address the wide receiver position. The fact that he's going in like the 13th round, he gets drafted sometimes, is just crazy. Like, I don't think he deserves to be drafted. And the other guy is Brandon Cooks. Like, now you can argue that there's actually a case for Brandon Cooks, because if CD ends up holding out, hey, Brandon Cooks could potentially be the guy here, maybe. But Brandon Cooks also another guy that we've seen the decline. Like, he's declined. He's not the player that he once was. And I would only be interested if CD's there. Otherwise, you're just drafting a guy who was already in that offense last year, was not fantasy relevant, when you could be missing out on the Rashee Rice and Jane Daniels for or Jaden Reed. So those, I just wouldn't be taking those kind of guys, and I would be just shooting for the moon on the rookies. So those two guys that I have no interest in whatsoever.
I don't mind that. I often find value because those guys end up being like top 40 guys, like flex worthy type plays. They're just not like the sexy names. They don't have the
Yeah.
appeal of the upside. So you do have to
Yeah.
kind of worry about that. Where a lot of people do go, though, is they go digging on rosters. They go digging on depth charts to try to find the breakout player, the guy that can exceed and maybe move up the ladder and that have efficiency metrics. And Tyler, I'm not a big analytics guy, but the one that the analytics guy loves, the one player, Dontavian Wicks. You see it all offseason. Dontavian Wicks, sleeper for the Green Bay Packers. We saw the deep touchdown in preseason. But we still got to remember, this is a guy that is fourth on the depth chart. Do I think he's a good football player? Yes. But there are 3 starters ahead of him. And if Christian Watson stays healthy, which is the big thing that here, if Christian Watson stays healthy, Dontavian Wicks is the 4th option in the passing game. It's plain and simple. Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed are ahead of him. Now, if Christian Watson's hurt, Romeo Doubs gets banged up, Jaden Reed gets banged up, now Dontavian Wicks has his opportunity. But in your 12-team leagues or thinner, right, your 10-team or 8-team leagues, the minute you draft Dontavian Wicks, you got 1 week for him to prove to you that he's going to be on your roster. And guess what you're going to do in the first week? Cut his ass if he's not.
Yeah.
If he's not productive, you will instantly cut Dontavian Wicks if he has 3 catches for 40 yards. What's the point of rostering a player like that who you don't believe in? You're just like, man, I hope he's the starter. He's not. One of those 3, those 3 are the starters. Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, and Christian Watson. So for me, it's like, why take a pick on a 4th receiver in the offense, a 4th in line for targets in the offense, when you can find so much better later in your draft? So I'm out on Dontavian Wicks.
I don't mind him, but I understand what you're saying. And also, like, just as a rookie, you hope that he produced a little bit better. It was okay, but nothing special. And Jaden Reed was
he showed
clearly
flashes, but he's not an every down player.
No, I understand that, but I'd rather take him over some other guys.
Yeah.